Beloved, welcome into this quiet crossing of moments, where the noise of the world softens just enough for something ancient to speak. This was not an accidental arrival. Out of infinite seconds unraveling across the universe, your presence here was threaded into place long before you noticed the pull. There are gatherings that happen in rooms, and others that happen in the unseen, where souls are guided by whispers they cannot explain. This is one of those gatherings. Even if you feel tired, even if doubt lingers at the edges of your faith like mist clinging to a shoreline, the fact that you are here reveals that something beyond chance has been leaning toward you. You have been walking a path that bends quietly away from crowds, a road that does not announce itself but insists upon being followed. At times it felt lonely, at times unnecessarily difficult, as though life kept removing what you had just learned to lean on. But there was a presence traveling with you through every narrowing turn, unseen yet unwavering. God's love did not stand back to observe your struggle. It entered it, wrapped itself around your fragility, and held you steady when you did not know how to remain standing. This love did not rush to explain itself. It simply acted, rearranging timelines, dissolving attachments, and protecting you in ways you only recognized later. When certain relationships fell silent, when doors closed without warning, when opportunities dissolved just as you reached for them, it was not because you were forgotten, it was because you were being spared. There are places that appear beautiful but cannot sustain the kind of light you carry. There are hands that reach for connection without understanding the responsibility of holding what heaven has touched. You were not rejected. You were redirected. Chosen love is not always gentle in its process. Sometimes it prunes, sometimes it isolates, sometimes it removes what feels essential in order to preserve what is eternal. Scripture speaks of plans written with intention, but plans are not always revealed in comfort. Often they unfold through silence, through seasons where answers are delayed and prayers feel suspended mid-air. Yet even in those stretches, you were not unheld. You were being carried through currents you could not see, protected from outcomes that would have dimmed you. Love left traces everywhere in your story, in the way harm never fully claimed you, in the way despair approached but did not consume, in the way timing intervened just before collapse. These were not coincidences stitched together by luck. They were signs etched quietly into your days, evidence of a divine attentiveness shaping your journey. And still, the mind questioned, as minds do. Why did the road feel heavier for you than for others? Why did joy arrive in fragments instead of floods? Why did belonging always seem close but never settled? The answer was never your unworthiness. It was the weight of what you carried. A life marked by divine affection carries a gravity that reshapes its surroundings. Not everyone is equipped to walk beside it. Some sensed it and stepped back. Others misunderstood it and tried to diminish it. Some felt unsettled simply being near what they could not name. Yet through it all, love remained constant, patient, persistent, shaping you quietly while the world looked elsewhere. You were being formed for deeper waters, places where surface-level living could no longer satisfy. Even when you resisted, even when you clung to familiar pain because it felt safer than the unknown, something within you refused to remain where you were treated as ordinary. That refusal was not arrogance, it was remembrance. A remembering written into your spirit long before your first breath. There were nights when this path felt unbearable, when the silence grew loud, and the absence of reassurance pressed against your chest. In those moments, questions rose uninvited. If this love is real, why? Does it still hurt? Why do you feel unseen even while being guided? The ache did not mean abandonment. It meant you were searching for nourishment in places that could not feed you. Human hearts long for touch, for affirmation, for presence that steadies trembling faith. You sought those things honestly, offering trust where it felt safe, only to discover that some hands could not carry what you placed in them. Your body learned the truth before your mind accepted it. The tension that surfaced in certain rooms, the exhaustion after certain conversations, the heaviness that followed interactions that should have brought comfort. All of it was language, warning you gently that your spirit was not meant to dwell there. For a long time, you turned that language inward, wondering if something was broken in you, if you were too sensitive, too intense, too much. But the truth was quieter and more sacred. You were carrying a depth that required care, and not everyone knew how to offer it. Love like this exposes what is hidden. It reveals fractures in others, not because you intend harm, but because light does that by simply existing. Some looked at your endurance and felt confusion. Others saw your survival and felt threatened. A few sensed the grace surrounding you and mistook it for distance. None of it diminished what was true. You were fiercely loved, guarded through fire and water alike. When you should have been consumed, you were preserved. When circumstances should have ended you, you emerged altered but alive. This love did not erase your mistakes, it moved through them, weaving redemption where shame tried to settle. It did not operate on conditions or checklists. It chose you repeatedly, patiently, even when you turned away or doubted its presence. There were moments you tried to explain the protection over your life as coincidence, as timing, as resilience you had somehow cultivated alone. But deep down, something knew better. There was an intelligence guiding your steps, a tenderness intervening when danger came too close. Every ending that broke your heart was also a boundary drawn in mercy. Every pause that frustrated you was a shelter you did not yet recognize. Even now, as you sit with these words, something inside you is stirring, cracked open and comforted at the same time. That is recognition. That is remembrance returning. The God who imagined galaxies into being has been speaking your name with the same care used to place stars in their courses. This love is not distant or symbolic. It has weight. It moves through days and nights, reshaping desires, closing paths that would have starved you, redirecting you toward spaces where your soul can finally breathe. You have survived things that should have ended you because you were never meant to disappear quietly. Peace has found you in seasons that made no sense because you were being taught to listen beyond logic. Every moment of your journey has been precise. Blessings arrived disguised as interruptions. Lessons arrived wrapped in loss. Strength emerged from darkness you never would have chosen. And now, there comes a moment when the realization can no longer be avoided. You were never wandering aimlessly. You were being led, deep within the quiet places of your knowing. Beneath every explanation you offered yourself to survive the unanswered questions, you always sensed it was love that moved first. Not the fragile love humans bargain with, not affection tied to performance or consistency, but a love that acted long before you understood its intention. While others traced straight lines through life, charting progress by milestones and applause, your path bent and curved in ways that confused even you. You watched people sprint ahead, settle quickly, gather certainty like trophies, while your own steps were adjusted by invisible hands that slowed you without explanation. At times it felt unfair, like being held back while everyone else was allowed to run. But love edits differently. Love pauses the story before a chapter that would have broken the spine of your becoming. It softens speed when haste would have demanded sacrifices you were never meant to offer. It removes you quietly from rooms where your voice would have thinned, where your presence would have slowly learned to apologize for its own depth. You remember how certain doors closed without drama, how some relationships faded not with betrayal, but with a strange, aching quiet, as if they simply could not follow you any further. You blamed yourself for those endings. You replayed conversations, examined your tone, questioned your worth, convinced that if you had been more patient, more agreeable, less intense, they would have stayed. But love knew what you did not yet have the language to name. Had they remained, they would have taught you to accept less than what your soul was designed to carry. They would have helped you build a life that fit comfortably inside their limitations. Love allowed the ache of their leaving because it refused to let you mistake confinement for safety. Again and again, you mistook protection for loss. You grieved opportunities that dissolved just as you reached for them, unaware that stepping through those doors would have demanded pieces of you that could never be replaced. You mourned futures that never arrived, not realizing they were futures where your spirit would have slowly dimmed. Love shielded you even from the prayers you once begged heaven to answer. It refined you through waiting, through uncertainty, through seasons where faith had to exist without reassurance. Being loved this way changed how you moved through the world. Crowds grew heavy, not because you felt superior, but because you felt everything. You noticed the fractures beneath laughter, the envy tucked inside compliments, the loneliness hidden under constant noise. Your spirit learned to read between words, to feel the emotional temperature of rooms before anyone spoke. This sensitivity was not weakness, though many called it that. It was evidence of refinement. You began to feel restless in familiar circles, unsettled by conversations that skimmed the surface, exhausted by spaces that celebrated noise but avoided truth. You were not rejecting people, you were outgrowing shallow water. Love would not allow you to drown where depth was required. It sharpened your discernment, taught you when to stay silent and when to step away, not out of fear, but out of faithfulness to what was forming within you. Your story no longer followed predictable rhythms because it was being written from a different vantage point, one that measured progress by alignment rather than speed, by integrity rather than approval. Even when you did not understand the edits being made to your life, even when resistance rose in you, and you longed for simpler paths, love continued its quiet work, shaping endurance, expanding capacity, preparing you for weight you could not yet see. The same love that narrowed your path also marked you for a future that could not be rushed. What once felt like delay was devotion in disguise. What felt like being overlooked was careful placement in obscurity where roots could grow without disturbance. You often wondered why recognition seemed to pass you by, why your efforts unfolded in silence while others were celebrated loudly. You did not know then that love was teaching you how to stand without applause, how to carry purpose without needing witnesses. There will come moments when others look at your life and try to calculate how you endured, how you remained standing through seasons that should have undone you. They will search for explanations that make sense to them. Timing, resilience, luck, never realizing that you were carried through darkness by a presence they could not see. That unseen carrying is why your presence unsettles some people. They cannot name why your stillness makes them uneasy, why your silence feels heavier than their constant words. Something about you reflects back what they have avoided in themselves. Love resting on your life exposes what is unhealed, not by accusation but by contrast. Some are drawn closer because it feels honest, because your presence feels like truth without performance. Others withdraw because it feels revealing, because standing near you requires facing things they have buried under distraction. Neither reaction is your responsibility. Love never retreated from you when you faltered. It did not withdraw when doubt clouded your faith, or when exhaustion made prayer feel impossible. It stepped into the mess with you, into questions without answers, into nights where tears arrived without language. It held you when you could not hold yourself, breathed hope into places where despair tried to settle. That is why the weight did not crush you, why something within you kept breathing even when you believed you were finished. This was not willpower alone. It was love refusing to let go. Love does not keep score. It does not wait for perfection before drawing near. It chooses again and again, even when you wander, even when you resist, even when you forget. As you slowly begin to accept this, something shifts in how you live. You stop forcing yourself into rooms where your spirit contracts. You stop apologizing for needing quiet in a world addicted to noise. Your circle becomes smaller, but deeper. Separation still aches at times, but you learn not to confuse that ache with abandonment. What feels like being hidden is often being prepared. Delays become training rather than punishment. Loneliness becomes protection rather than rejection. Even when clarity has not yet arrived, you sense the guidance continuing, precise and patient, adjusting your steps, setting boundaries you did not know how to set for yourself, carrying you forward toward moments that will require the strength, discernment, and depth being formed now, Moments that will one day reveal that nothing in your story was wasted, misplaced, or forgotten. As the path continues to unfold, you begin to notice a subtle change in the air around you, as though the world itself is responding to the quiet work happening within. What once felt like endless preparation now starts to feel like positioning. You are still unseen by many, still misunderstood by some, yet something within you has settled into a deeper knowing. The restless urgency that once drove you to search for answers has softened into a steady awareness that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Love has not finished its work. It has simply moved into a more deliberate phase. There are moments now when insight arrives without effort, when discernment feels instinctive rather than learned. You sense when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when silence will carry more weight than words. This is not coincidence, but alignment. The refining you endured has tuned your spirit to a frequency that recognizes truth without needing explanation. Even the pain you once tried to escape has become a quiet teacher, reminding you of how far you have traveled and what you survived. You begin to see patterns where chaos once lived, threads of intention woven through experiences that once felt random or cruel. The memories that used to sting now carry a strange reverence, as though they were necessary passages rather than detours. Love has transformed your relationship with time. You no longer measure your life by how quickly things happen, but by how deeply they take root. Waiting no longer feels like absence, it feels like gathering. In the stillness, you notice how your inner world has expanded, how compassion flows more freely, how judgment has softened into understanding. You recognize suffering in others, not as weakness, but as a language you have learned to read fluently. This awareness draws some people toward you without effort. They feel safe in your presence, even if they cannot articulate why. Others keep their distance, sensing that proximity requires honesty they are not yet willing to offer. You no longer chase either response. Love has taught you that belonging cannot be forced and connection cannot be negotiated. You have learned to trust the quiet confirmations that rise within you, the gentle assurance that does not shout but steadies. Even when uncertainty remains, it no longer feels threatening. It feels spacious, like a horizon that invites exploration rather than fear. You understand now that being led does not always mean being informed. Sometimes it means surrendering to guidance without seeing the full map, allowing love to reveal the next step only when you are ready to take it. This trust reshapes how you carry yourself. There is a calm in your movements, a patience in your reactions, a depth in your listening that did not exist before. You are no longer trying to prove your worth or justify your pace. The world may still rush past you, but you are no longer pulled by its urgency. You have learned that love is not in a hurry, and neither are you. As seasons turn, you begin to sense that what has been forming within you is not meant to remain hidden forever. The obscurity that once protected you starts to feel porous, as though light is gradually filtering through the edges of your life. This does not arrive with fanfare or sudden transformation, but with quiet invitations, moments where your presence matters more than you expected, where your words land deeper than you intended, where your steadiness becomes an anchor for someone else's uncertainty. You realize that the depth you were shaped to carry is not only for your own survival, but for the sake of others who are still learning how to breathe in deeper waters. Love begins to move through you, rather than merely around you. You notice how your responses create space instead of tension, how your honesty invites truth rather than defense. This is not because you have all the answers, but because you are no longer afraid of the questions. The pain you endured has widened your capacity to hold complexity without needing to resolve it. You can sit with grief without rushing it away, stand with doubt without trying to conquer it, and offer presence where solutions are not yet possible. This too is part of what you were being prepared for. There are still moments when the old ache surfaces, when being different feels heavy, when you long for simplicity or ease. But even then, you sense love holding those longings gently. not dismissing them, not shaming them, simply acknowledging them as part of being human. You are no longer tempted to trade depth for comfort. You have seen what shallow peace costs, and you know it is too expensive. As your life continues to unfold, you understand that guidance does not mean immunity from hardship. It means companionship within it. Love does not promise a path without storms. It promises a presence that does not leave when storms arrive. You carry this awareness quietly, letting it inform your choices without announcing itself. The future remains unwritten, but it no longer feels threatening. It feels intentional. Each step forward is taken with a kind of reverence, as though you are walking on ground that has been prepared long before you arrived. You do not rush toward what is next, nor do you cling to what is passing. You move with the understanding that love has already accounted for what you cannot foresee, and so you continue, guided not by certainty, but by trust, not by fear, but by a steady, enduring love that has been shaping your story from the very beginning.